made a cold-hearted bitch cry. That's all you need to know. Hey guys, my name is Em and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is one that has actually been highly requested, and it is my favorite romance books. So if you know, I have recently been getting into romance books because for years I have written off the genre, saying I don't like romance simply because I didn't like YA contemporaries, and I still don't. But I didn't realize that there was a whole other branch and multiple other branches of romance that are completely different and that I have now read and loved. So I am here to give you my top romance book recommendations. There is about 10 books on this list. You do have to bear in mind that I am fairly new to the romance genre, so there's not a huge range, and most of the books on here are ones that I've read like in the past month or two, but nonetheless really love. Also, I do want to give a quick disclaimer: most of these books have mature content in them, and also please do look up the trigger warnings or content warnings for any of these books, because I am not going to be going into too much detail about them for spoiler reasons and just for length of video reasons. But do look up the content warnings. I will leave the link to the website where you can check trigger warnings down below, just to make sure that it's all okay. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So these books are kind of in no particular order, however this one just comes out on top no matter what, and this is actually a series that I'm recommending to you, and it is the Off-Campus Series by Elle Kennedy. The Deal is the first book, and oh my god, this is a series that I read I think in March or April, and holy shit, like I have never read anything like this before. It's a hockey romance, and there are 4 books in the main series, but there are also 4 books in a spin-off series which I have yet to read because I'm honestly terrified of the series being over. So first of all, this is a college romance, and it's also a sports romance. We have this group of friends who live in this house together. They're on this hockey team together, and they're very like attractive and very good at hockey, and each book in the original series follows one team member and then their individual relationships. But do not let the fact that each of these books have a different POV throw you off, because honestly it is the best, and you fall in love with each and every single character. And also because they are all friends, and you do see the previous characters in each of the books, like all of the characters are in each of the books. It just depends on whose romance and relationship that we're following. But in the first one we have my absolute babies, Garrett and Hannah, and oh my god, this is just incredible. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but go look it up. I think the first one is free on Kindle. I don't know if it still is, but it was when I read them anyways. Go snap that up. The next one that I have to recommend to you is one that again is very much hit or miss for people, and it is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. I have not read another Penelope Douglas because apparently this is her tamest book. This essentially follows Misha and Ryan, who have been pen pals since they were children, and they write each other all the time, but they've never met each other. They don't know what each other looks like. They've never looked each other up. They've never met. They've never talked outside of these letters. So one day Misha's letters just completely stop out of the blue. Ryan has no idea why. She's kind of living a double life, because in her letters she is the person who she wants to be, a very kind, caring, unique individual, but in reality she is a bit of a bitch, honestly, because she is trying so desperately to fit in with the cool kids in school, because this takes place in a high school, but like just as they're about to leave high school. So they are 18, because there are quite a few scenes in here. She is trying to fit in with the cool kids, and the cool kids are very mean, and they kind of pick on people, so she does too, just to seem cool. And then Misha shows up at her school for the last few months. We have no idea why. We have no idea why he stopped writing. He knows that it's Ryan, but she doesn't know that it's him. So it gets crazy, and oh my god, this freaking book is amazing. The next is another ebook that I read, and it was The Dare by Harley LaRue. This is a book that is very short, so it is like 150 pages, and there are a lot of content warnings for this, so do look it up. It actually says it on the first page of the book, which I think is amazing. And this essentially follows our 2 main characters, who I am blanking on their names right now. I can't remember. They're just after graduating high school, I think, or they're in college, and they go to this party, and she was an it girl. Like, she was a very popular girl. She had a popular boyfriend. She was prom queen, all those stereotypical like that girl type of thing. He was very much so the weirdo. So they end up at the party together. They play truth or dare, but via beer pong, and if she loses, she has to become his servant for the night. She needs to do every single thing that he tells her to do, and of course he's going to make it a little bit crazy, a little bit kinky. You know it is. She loses, and the whole book is basically her leading up to having feelings for him, because she doesn't want to admit it, and this is so good. I gave it like a 5 out of 5 star. So the next book that I have to recommend to you today is actually one that I read May 2020, so I don't actually remember every single detail in this book. However, I remember being absolutely obsessed with it, and it is The Gravity of Us by Brittany C. Cherry. This is actually the last book in a series, but they're all separate standalone books, and I didn't know this. I got this as a gift last year. This follows our main character, Graham Russell, who is very much so a grump. He just has no life to him. I'm pretty sure he's an author too. He's just not happy with anything. He's in a very, very toxic marriage, and then he ends up meeting this girl at this funeral, and she is very much so the opposite of that, but she's also going through a lot. So then they meet and they kind of have a thing, and there is such amazing things involved in this. It very much so has the trope of I didn't believe in love until I met you, and I loved that. And also there's so many like hard things that happen to these characters, because Graham has a baby but the mother has walked out, and so he is like raising the baby alone, but actually she is kind of raising the baby, which will make sense if you read the book because it all ties in. But it is so good. I remember really loving this. I can't actually remember if this was spicy or not, because I feel like my reading tastes last year were very, very different. However, I'm presuming it was, just by the cover. I don't know though. The next one is a bit of a switch up because it's more of a rom-com, but it still has some other elements, and it is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I read this one this week actually, and I was surprised by how much I like it, because as I said before, I don't like contemporary books, so I was really shocked that I liked this. But I read this whole thing, all 400 pages of it, in one single day, because I sat outside. I literally felt like I was on the beach. I felt like I was in this village with them. It was amazing. So this follows two writers who kind of grew up as rivals, and they end up living next to each other in beach houses for the summer, and they end up kind of forming this deal that they're going to try write each other's genres to get them out of writer's block, because they're both in writer's block. So he is like a literary fiction slash sci-fi writer, and she is a romance writer. So they swap genres, they go on little dates to inspire the other genre, and all the whole time they're convincing each other that they're not falling in love, but they really are falling in love. And again, this also has the trope of I didn't believe in love. I was very much a cynic before I met you, because she is a romance author, she believes in love. He very much so doesn't, because of a certain thing that's happened to him in his past, and it is amazing. Okay, so the next book that I have to recommend to you, I read a couple of weeks ago, and I've made some of my friends read this too, and it is Playing with Fire by LJ Shen. Where do I start with this? This is just the atmosphere, the vibes in this book, the relationship in this book is absolutely incredible. So we have our two main characters. Our girl is called Grace Shaw and our guy is called West, and they both have traumas in their past. Grace is a burn survivor, and she is very much insecure about that. She's kind of bullied for that, honestly, and reading this book, it did make me frustrated at times, because all of these characters were in their 20s and they were calling a burn survivor toasty, which to me is just plain offensive. Like I don't know how they did that. Like I don't, but I overlooked it because I wanted to get into this book, and believe me, it was worth it because it was amazing. West is then kind of an underground fighter, because everybody thinks he's a spoiled rich kid because he gets so much money from running this underground fighting ring. However, he has some secrets. He might not be that rich. He might be paying off a debt to someone for something that he did in the past. We don't know. And they strike a relationship, and it's very much so I hate everyone in the world but you, because everybody thinks he's this like really scary fighter, like this really big bully, but he's the biggest softie, and he helps with Grace and Grace's grandmother who is sick, and he's just the sweetest guy. Like this relationship was perfect. And what I loved about this book is there was about 50 pages at the end just talking about their relationship. It was just so nice, because I love that. I love at the end of a romance book you get to see where they are like a year on. It makes me so happy, because I'm like, yes, it worked out, they got together, you know, that type of thing. So I have two books left to recommend to you today, and they're actually both by the same author. This is an author that everybody talks about. She is very, very popular, and I finally decided to try one of her books last week, and let's just say I binged two of the books that I owned of hers in the space of like 3 days, because they are very addictive and I recommend them to everybody. So the first one that I have to recommend to you is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I know you may be seeing this book all over the place, but that is for a reason. I do have to say, major trigger warnings for domestic abuse. In some scenes it was fairly heavy, so just do be mindful of that. But if you're looking for kind of a more positive ending, it also has that. So this follows our main character, Lily Bloom, who grew up in an abusive household. Her father was very abusive towards her mother and to her sometimes, so she befriended this homeless boy who had been living in the abandoned house next door. He was called Atlas. He was her first love, and they promised to find each other again because he left to go to the military. Years later, she's in Boston after her father's funeral, and this is like when she's in her 20s, and she meets this guy on a rooftop called Ryle, and they kind of have an instant connection. They're like, oh, we'll never see each other again because he's a neurosurgeon. He does not want a relationship. However, fate brings them together and they keep meeting up, and he's like the perfect guy. So they have like this relationship, they fall in love. There are a few time skips in here, so it's not like insta love, it just flashes forward and doesn't bring us through every single detail of them falling in love. And then everything is going fine until she meets Atlas in a restaurant, and it kind of throws things off kilter. And then we have Ryle, who kind of shows his true colors and excuses it through trauma, and it is very, very hard to read. I did cry at this book, and I do not usually cry at books, so it made a cold-hearted bitch cry. That's all you need to know. Definitely go read it. I loved it so much. And there has been a petition going around for Colleen Hoover to write a sequel or a novella to this, and she's finally acknowledged that. We love to see it. The final book to recommend to you today is another Colleen Hoover book because, as I said, I'm obsessed, and it is Heartbones. I loved this book so much. I genuinely read this all in one day. It is like 350 pages or something, and it was so good. This follows Samson and Bea, who are very, very different in terms of Bea grew up in a neglected poverty household and Samson grew up in a very rich and wealthy household. And when something happens to Bea's mother, who is an addict, she goes to live with her estranged father for the summer in like this beach house in Texas, and Samson is living next door in the beach house, and it just shows such an amazing vibe. As it is Colleen Hoover, of course there are going to be some sad things, some plot twists, some secrets, some betrayal. Of course there is, but I have to say that this book just made me feel overall warm and fuzzy inside, because it is very much so a summer beach romance read. I read this sitting outside, and again I could kind of drift off and pretend I was here. So this is just incredible. I really loved it, and I recommend it to everybody. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I have really enjoyed reading romances lately. I think the weather really makes it fun to read romances. But yeah, so I am planning on reading more, and hopefully I will be able to do a more specific romance recommendation next time, like Kindle Unlimited romances or certain tropes. So do let me know down in the comments what type of video or what specific type of romance you want to be recommended. Just let me know down in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and also give me some recommendations, because if you have any recommendations for me based on these books that I have showed you, please know YA contemporaries, I don't like them. But yeah, please do leave those down in the comments if you do have any, because I would really, really like to find more romances. So that is it for this video. Comment the beach emoji if you watch to the end, because honestly I feel like that's super fitting, because romances just make me want to go to the beach. So yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay amazing, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.